Another particular acknowledgement to the folks on the front line. There are a number of ASHA workers and Anganwadi workers. Can we give them all a round of applause? Please ask me to speak loud. Is this good? All right. So as we were walking up, I noticed something on Sean's very classy hoodie. And it said 2 is equal to 17. And then I wondered what Basanta was saying about, nutrition impacting learning outcomes. And I thought to myself, what on earth did I do in primary school? Because I did not think, Sean, that 2 was equal to 17.
Yes, so I was accused of actually having failed maths,
All right.
I think, as we were having this conversation. But there's a certain logic to 2 equals 17. How many sustainable development goals are there? 17. What sustainable development goal calls for elimination of all forms of malnutrition? And I think it's very clear, and this is the case we try to make to investors of all sorts, that in fact, if we improve nutrition, we will have impacts on all 17 sustainable development goals. And I would go further to say that if we don't improve nutrition, we're going to fail on all 17 sustainable development goals. So when I talk to people, from Anganwadi workers to ministers of finance to heads of state, I say 2 equals 17 because investing in nutrition is going to have impacts on all 17 sustainable development goals. So that's why.
Fair enough. All right.
Fair
I was
enough.
just feeling insecure for a moment.
Now, I'll give you another formula that you might feel better about.
Okay.
I would say that 45% does not equal 1%.
That bit I can understand.
You agree?
Yeah,
You
I
agree.
I agree, yeah.
And so what's behind those two numbers? I think we've heard today about undernutrition as the attributable cause of 45% of under-5 mortality. Now, I think, as nutritionists, public health people, we have all these nuanced language, attributable cause of. Well, what does that mean? It means that if those kids, no matter what they had died from, if they had been well nourished, they would be alive today. And so in front of this global crisis of 45% of under-5 mortality being attributable to undernutrition, how much do we invest? And if you look at just the crude metric of official development assistance, so the assistance given by bilateral governments, development banks, philanthropies, less than 1% goes to nutrition. Now, we have been seeing some progress to date. Just the most recent data on development assistance, we've moved from about $1 billion a year to $1.4 billion a year of 2017. But that's why we focus very much on two things: more money for nutrition and more nutrition for the money. Because without more serious investment, we're not going to get to that SDG 2 target that we have all signed up for. But I wanted to turn to you because one of the things that's thrilled me in India, I've only had the privilege of being engaged in India the last 6 years since I've been at the Gates Foundation, is that actually India is the outlier in that 45%, 1% disconnect. Actually, there is huge government investment in nutrition, and so I wanted you to explain to me why India has prioritized nutrition so much in government, a whole government ministry dedicated to nutrition, and what's the importance of the National Nutrition Mission in all of this?
Sure. So I think, and this has taken time, but part of the change has happened because nutrition is no longer regarded as a sectoral issue. Nutrition is no longer just a nutrition issue. Nutrition is a political issue, it's an economic issue, it's a social justice issue. We spoke about learning outcomes. What do learning outcomes finally translate into? If I am well nourished, I will do well in school. If I do well in school, I will be economically more productive. If I'm economically more productive, the GDP of the country becomes different. You made the point about some of us might not have been in this room if we were undernourished. I think that argument has been made by, all of you in this room and so many outside, and it's taken a while, but I think we're at that critical mass of people understanding and caring. How has this happened? To my mind, two things have happened. One is that we've taken evidence and made it simple and palatable. Why did the government push WASH so intensively? show for hygiene, show for some indicator improvements, but finally translated into a number, 3,500 rupees per capita per annum of preventable healthcare costs through improved wash. Those are the kind of numbers that stick. Those are the numbers that people understand, and that's what you can organize around. What is the nutrition mission? What does the nutrition mission mean? Coming to your second question, Sean. The mission in an Indian context means three things. One is it indicates priority. The second is it indicates urgency. And the third is it indicates this is not a single ministry issue, right? A whole number of stakeholders need to come together. And there are the ones that you would expect, and leadership comes from WCD, for example. But to give you an idea, rural development is as critical. Agriculture is as critical. What kind of things could the Agriculture Ministry be doing differently to promote nutrition? For starters, this is entirely about market forces. How do we make sure that we create the conditions for growing profitably for farmers, more nutritious, diverse meals? That happens when you create the demand for them. That also happens when you look at the context around. And if you look at the country right now, on the west, there is severe water pressure because of agricultural activity. Is there a way that we can promote more agriculture in the eastern side, and you tick off climate change, you tick off environment, and you tick off nutrition at the same time? In all of this, the mission is fantastic and is an incredible start. The next steps are going to be to make sure that the national convergence that you're seeing in the mission gets translated to states and gets translated finally to districts, villages, blocks, and to the mother that we're trying to reach. You said kind words about the priority in India, Sean. Well, I wanted to ask you, how is India aligned to the global political environment? What can it pick up from there? What is it indeed it contributing back to the world's thinking on nutrition?
Yeah, and I was reflecting on this the other day, and how many in this room practice nutrition today for yourself? Nutrition is sort of interesting in public health because, unlike, if you have an HIV problem, you probably go see a specialist. If you have a malaria problem, you probably go see a specialist. Since for nutrition, all of us practice it for ourselves and the people we care for every day, everybody has an opinion. So that's why I think it's particularly important to really look at the evidence base and make sure that evidence is informing policy. And I think it's been stated here, this is one of the really incredible things about India is how aligned the national policies are with the global evidence. I had the privilege just yesterday of visiting an Angawadi center, again, praise the Angawadi workers and the ASHA workers I saw there, yesterday in Dausa district in Rajasthan, the state of Rajasthan. And the ICDS program was set up in 1975. The world discovered the focus on the 1,000-day window in 2008. Well, India discovered it back in 1975. So that's the heart of the evidence base. I think you see the other things I would call out, the focus on the 1,000-day window, the focus on breastfeeding, complementary feeding, maternal nutrition. We've seen huge progress in the last 3 years on large-scale food fortification, and there's a recent publication globally about the huge effectiveness of large-scale food fortification on bringing down at the population level micronutrient deficiencies. So I think it's really this extraordinary situation has been stated that there is a very favorable policy environment in India that's very aligned with global best practice. And I think that acting on that now is the critical thing. And that's why I actually wanted to turn it back to you. I think, as we saw in the presentation from Aryan, when I first got in contact with India again 6 years ago, I think India was in a data drought as it concerns nutrition. We're probably now in a data monsoon, to be appropriate, or deluge. And what do you think are really the next challenges of how India will use all this robust data that's being collected to really drive towards the aspirations we all have?
Sure, yeah. I like the data monsoon concept, and I think it flows well, no pun intended, with what Aryan was saying. there is a massive amount of data and we have the systems to collect it and we're collecting it real time, and that's awesome, and there's a huge amount of effort that's been done by many in this room. I think the opportunities going forward are how exactly are we using that data? And Aryan alluded to that. There's first of all one architecture issue, if I can call it that, which is that there's a set of data which is available with the health ministry, there's a set of data that's available with WC, and there's similarly with others, but the mother is the same. The delivery mechanisms, the messaging that you want to give the same. So is there a way that we can bring these data points together? So there's the consolidation of data. The second is, and the technology exists for that, is for us to use things like machine learning to do real-time course correction. You know, collect data today, tomorrow the messaging that an Anganwadi worker or an ASHA worker has to give to a mother should change, because it can change and it many times needs to change as well. The third is to start understanding what are the other options for getting messaging out there. Again, use of data, but you know, mobile technology has transformed. There used to be a time when you thought a wall painting or a tin plate was the gold standard. There's so much more that you can do, and you've got the data back and to be able to support that. I also think what data can do is help drive strong policy priorities. Low birth weight prevention, if you think about it from a data analytics point of view, is the best leading indicator of issues that are out there. It's been acknowledged by Poshan Abhiyan. Now, what is low birth weight prevention? What does it entail? You need to look at the component parts of it. A quarter of children who are undernourished, it starts while they were still in their mother's wombs. There needs to be something that addresses that problem. During the course of today, I'll tell you about efforts that we're trying to do to combine better nutritional intake with reducing maternal infections. Again, because both of these in combination reduces low birth weight. Early pregnancy, we know, is a really strong marker of future nutrition outcomes. And if you think about the demographics of the country, only 25% of women participate in the labor force. You need to work backwards and say we need to get girls into primary school, we need to get them into secondary school, we need to give them life skills, we need to give them vocational skills, we need to give them chances of income generation. And guess what? You do all of that, it has a profound impact on nutrition indicators and reduces low birth weight. So it's the use and application of that data. I want to ask you, Sean, what initiatives or thinking or innovations or priorities are you hearing about at the global level that excite you and you think, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if we were able to bring this to India?
Yeah, and I actually wanted to build on your low birth weight example, and I'll actually start challenging even the terminology. I think, again, as public health people, we often speak in language that doesn't really resonate that much. We talk about low birth weight, we talk about small for gestational age, and there's a very prestigious professor of public health at Johns Hopkins who I was at a workshop with him the other day, and he says, we got to stop calling it that. Let's call it what it is. This is fetal malnutrition. These are kids who've been malnourished in the womb. And I was really struck again yesterday of this delightful little girl I was holding at the Anganwadi Center who was 7 months old and at 7 months weighed 3 kilos. She was born at 1.8 kilos. We know if that infant has been malnourished during pregnancy, getting her on a growth trajectory is just an enormous challenge. And if we can get these infants born already at a healthy weight, we know we've put them on a good growth trajectory. And I think coming back again to your data issue and evidence, part of it is just seizing the opportunities. One of the slides up there, you will notice, you will have seen the coverage of at least for India from the NFHS4 data, of at least 4 ANC visits, which is, if I'm not mistaken, about 51% across India. But consuming iron folic acid tablets is just 30%. That's a 21% opportunity gap. So that's actually something that excites me right now, is this big focus globally on improving ANC, not just coverage, but quality. And we know by driving ANC quality, we will have a huge impact. There were just new global estimates on low birth weight. I think on one hand it's incredibly important because it's starting to draw attention to the issue. It's discouraging because we've seen, despite the World Health Assembly target on reducing low birth weight, we've had just very glacial progress. And I think particularly here in India, that focus on making sure that we're doing the right thing in terms of getting the right nutrition, the right supplements to mums, and making sure the infection control, so the quality of that whole ANC package, and we're actually measuring birth weight correctly so that kids who are born with low birth weight are getting the right services. I'm also excited that we're seeing something standard of care in every developed country. If women don't get just iron and folic acid, because the presumption is assume there's a risk of any micronutrient deficiency. The standard of care is multivitamins. And I think the new evidence on the impact of multiple micronutrient supplements of being, in fact, far better than just iron folic acid. And as India improves ANC coverage, there's a huge opportunity to roll that out. But I concur, it's a huge way to go forward. I want to come back to some of your comments because I said on many global panels, there's all this rhetoric around nutrition needs, multi-sectoral action, multi-stakeholder action. I would argue there's probably no better place in the world than India to seize that and turn that rhetoric into reality. And so when you think of multi-stakeholder action, multi-sectoral action, I guess what would you see as the biggest opportunities? And I'll ask the question also with a data point, because I also was struck by one of the data points up on the slide from Vasanta. When you think that infants 6 to 23 months, only 8.7 have even a minimally